Hello, my friends. As you might see on this military map, Ukraine went even deeper with its counteroffensive in Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. We have it from the Institute for the Study of War. And I would say it's kind of the conservative source to receive the information coming from the front lines. But even if they tell that it is happening, it means that it is happening. The conservative source, I do not mean political preferences, all right? It's just they publish information usually with big delay, but here they publish it. So it looks like the Ukrainian plan to cut Russian forces in Solotki really works. This is the very important road here, and Russian forces are being, I would say, pocketed between Andriivka and Solotki in this area. It's the similar tactics that Russian army usually uses, but Ukraine is more effective with that. I mean, advancing from at least two of the spots with two of the vectors to jam enemy army in the clouds. There's also one counteroffensive happening towards east from Vishneva. Also, Ukraine tries to cut the road that sometimes Russia is using for supplies. And according to the most recent information, Ukraine went on a counterattack towards Gulai-Pole, also from two of the sides. Gulai-Pole is a very important settlement since it's the hideout for the Russian army. So Russians sent some of the small infantry troops there, and they've been accumulated in the ruined buildings and the basements. And after it, Russia attacks nearby villages as they tried to capture Zaluzhnyi, but Ukraine cut them off here and now takes an advantage. All of that is happening because Russia has tremendous issues with communication. They basically were cut from the Starlinks. My friends, it's a very important message. If you are watching me right now, and I know you're watching, please press like. Just below, thumb up, press it. And also subscribe for the channel. It is for free. And if you want to support my job financially, well, there is the link for my Patreon in the video description, or you may press button join for the membership. Thank you, my friends, a lot for what you do for this channel. Let's continue. Meanwhile, we have the copy from the Russian generals. They say that disconnection of the Starlink terminals did not affect the command and communication system for the troops and the units in the zone of the special military operation. Moreover, Russian generals say that they use Starlink to fool the enemy. I wonder how they might do it. It's unprecedented to fool the enemy using Starlink antennas. I cannot even comprehend how is it possible. And what about those volunteers who gathered all of those funds to supply Starlinks for the Russian army? So they're brainwashing people, saying that, oh, we are fine without Starlinks, but actually their communication is being crushed, and Ukraine, because of that and proper counteroffensive, has more territorial gains than Russia. I mean, for the last months for sure. And we count here also Russian offensive, for example, in Pokrovsk direction, where they were successful with infiltration attacks, but Ukraine made the decision to withdraw from Mirnograd and part of the Pokrovsk. Well, some people say, why don't we have this update of Ukrainian territorial gains on a deep state military map source? It's usually kind of precise and they share the real information on the front lines, but deep state works in coordination with the Ukrainian armed forces, and it is happening exactly as before happened with Kupiansk. And for example, on December 11th, nothing was happening, and December 12th, you see, Ukraine already cut the Russian army, and this counteroffensive was happening for 2 weeks. Exactly the same day Zelensky went to Kupiansk to film this legendary video telling that Russian propaganda is just a pure lies, and also to show to our Western partners, especially to Donald Trump, that Russia is not winning, that Ukraine shouldn't be pushed because Russia is unable to achieve its so-called goals of the special military operation. They're just bluffing. Russian generals and officials, they still say that Kupiansk is under full Russian control and that Ukrainian troops were annihilated there. This is nonsense. So, of course, with one of the future updates, we'll see blue areas in Zaporizhia, in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast here, and also near Kamensk. Russian analytics write themselves that Ukraine is successful in multiple of the areas, and they are struggling with communication. And the high-rank Russian military command directly bans Russian local commanders and soldiers from using Telegram. Well, they still use it sometimes with VPNs, but they violate this order, and it's up to the local commander whether he allows to do it for the soldiers or not. The actual picture is something like that already. Ukraine has liberated 236 square kilometers of the territory just for the last couple of weeks. And if we trust the Institute for the Study of War, Ukraine went even deeper. The idea is to cut Russians between Zaporizhia and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts. Well, Russians also have the territorial gains, but those are mostly proclaimed gains with their flag operations. Well, I wouldn't say that it's the counteroffensive full scale of Ukraine yet, but still it's the counterattack. Ukrainian military command tells that no, it's not the counteroffensive action, it's just some of the fluctuations of the front lines. Yes, our armed forces are attacking here and there, but mostly they do not specify what is happening. But we may actually confirm the real picture from the images coming from the front lines, also videos filmed by Russians. Okay, Russians continue to surrender to Ukrainian drones. But this drone is something special. It had the speakers, and our guys transmitted the audio information to Russians on Russian, because Ukrainians, they also speak Russian, most of them. Ukrainians say if you leave your dugout, you will not be destroyed. This is the dugout, and they surrendered to Ukrainian side. They were later on spotted on the road and taken by Ukrainian infantry. Totally 5 Russian soldiers surrendered, and do they look like the second army in the world? They look like, the German army retreating at the end of the Second World War. Yeah, especially this guy really reminds me someone. Yeah, some of the Russian soldiers who refuse to surrender, their destiny is not okay for them personally. For Ukraine, it's also not okay because Ukraine is wasting drones. And drones cost money, so Ukrainians prefer Russians to surrender. If they want to exchange their soldiers for Ukrainian drones, well, this strategy would not work for Putin because the time you need to produce the drone and efforts are way less than to produce Russian infantrymen. Yes, Russians have bigger population relative to Ukraine, but still they're not infinite. Alright, Russians continue their attempts to fix their communication. For example, here's the Russian infantry guy. He was forced to climb this kind of the big, what is this, a tower? Well, Ukrainian drone operator, it seems like, was waiting for this opportunity, and Russian was not successful in installing the gear that is used to provide 5G signal in this area. Yeah, this guy definitely lost his qualification. Oh my god, machines are rising against humans but still under control by Ukrainians. Yeah, that's the ground unmanned vehicle. As you see, it is used to suppress the enemy fire. It's already darkness and Russians do not understand who is attacking them. And of course they were cancelled by this huge machine gun which has been installed on this drone. Drones really matter, ground drones as well. Well, not just drones are used to ambush Russian infantry, but also Leopard 2A4 tank, as it was shown by 155th Separate Brigade. Before, that brigade was not that capable, but now it's one of the best. Yeah, this operation with the fast movement towards the target, performing the mission and returning back, they're quite risky in general, but Ukraine still conducts those. And the weather is foggy. Ukraine used the poor visibility in its counteroffensive actions. I guess it is happening in Zaporizhia. Alright, Kupiansk direction, little by little, Ukrainian army kicks out Russian infantry forces from Kupiansk completely. Yeah, still there is some of the presence of the Russian infantry, but Ukraine chases those and annihilate. Alright, FP2 drones are in action once again. This is the Russian air defense system S-300BM, or VM if we read it in Russian. Well, that one is kind of expensive. It has off-road capabilities, installed radar and also launcher altogether. It is used to operate autonomously, but it is unable to defend itself against very small drones. Alright, that's Russian freaking Orthodox Church. Guys, this is definitely happening inside the temple. This is so-called Christianity they have, Russians. I have nothing against Christianity, as you might understand, but in Russia, it is not normal. Those are not Christians. Those are crazy, stupid people. What the hell are they doing in the church? It's a Satan church, I would say. They play music, they practice with weapons, and I would say also that those guys are really young. They're before the age of conscription. So then some of the guys like Tucker Carlson say, oh, Ukraine is against Christianity. Well, if they call this a Christianity, well, definitely Ukraine is against this Russian influence on its own territory that Russia had before. Now it's gone almost, but still lots of the people, they're brainwashed that, oh, it's just a Moscow church which is valid. No, Ukraine has its own Orthodox Christian church. And the Ukrainians, they do not practice weapons inside the temples. This is unhinged. This is madness. Alright, Ilyinsky oil refinery is still on fire for the second day consecutive. We have those kind of the images from Supernova Plus Telegram channel. Russians are unable to extinguish it. There are some of the reservoirs with oil on fire. So the fire spread from one tank to another. Maybe there are some of the fire teams working, they're risking a lot, but Ukraine every night strikes Russian territory as well as Russia strikes Ukraine. This is one more refinery in Ukhta. They tried to shut down the drone with the help of maybe Kalashnikov. You see, one drone already hit this facility. And there is another drone that was flying to the spot. And here we have one more cloud from the second drone. Ukraine is very effective using drones. That's the new modification of the Luty drone, which may fly for a longer distance. And here we have the aftermath. This building was hit in the port of Taman, Krasnodarsky Krai, Russian Federation. The strike happened 3 days ago. Belgorod Oblast, that's the local power plant, and here is the result of the Ukrainian drone strike. Belgorod stays without electricity mostly, and without heat, as well as many of the Ukrainian cities. So SMO, Russian Special Military Operation, also travels to Russian territories. And we have very interesting video. You see, this is the Russian helicopter Mi-17, or maybe it's Mi-8. It's Mi-8 helicopter. It has the round butt. You may see it over here. And the Ukrainian drone operator nearly hits, maybe a couple of the meters, maybe several of the feet. But it was really close. Yeah, helicopter made it out, unfortunately, lucky bastards. But there were already cases before then Ukraine was capable to hit helicopters flying in the skies with the help of the FPV drones. Nevertheless, Ukraine hit a helicopter yesterday. It was Kamov-27, also very versatile one, and used by Russian Navy, mostly, but it was found somewhere on occupied territory. Yeah, the occupied territory of Crimea could be Kacha airfield because it's the base for those kind of the helis. Alright, about negotiations that happened in Geneva just yesterday. Nothing new. Witkoff is okay with that. Both parties agreed to update their respective leaders and continue working towards a deal. So they want to make a deal. And they force Ukraine, continue to force, for capitulation, and Ukraine doesn't agree on that. And Russia doesn't want to stop the war. Everything is the same. They sent Medinsky to the place. Medinsky, who is absolutely useless. He may be again said about historical perspective of Putin that Ukraine should not exist, as he mentioned before. So those negotiations are for nothing. And this guy Barak Ravit, who actually leaked this peace agreement, 28 points, you might remember this one. So two sources with knowledge told me negotiations in political group in Geneva got stuck today. So stuck, no progress. The sources say that the reason was the positions presented by the new Russian chief negotiator Medinsky. So they torpedoed those negotiations, the Russian side. The peace with Russia is not possible throughout those negotiations. Russia should be forced for peace by military action from Ukrainian side, by support of Ukraine, Ukrainian military, by our colleagues, partners, allies. That is how to stop Russia and also hurt Russian economy a lot. Well, Russia is stagflating, but the pace is not ideal. It might take many more years for Russia to really suffer. And I expect that Putin will not stop the war even in this case. He will continue till the very end because he's psycho. He wants to reach the goals of the special military operation, basically occupy or annihilate Ukraine, for Ukraine not to exist because he already put it as his main goal of life. If he started this full-scale war and continued to sacrifice his people for now basically nothing, or for ruined buildings, villages, towns on the front lines. The New York Times came out with the article saying that Putin offered the United States unrealistic profit in exchange for lifting sanctions from Russia. Moscow stated that lifting sanctions could bring Washington 12 trillion in profits. It's surreal, it will not happen like that, it is not possible, but Russians are promising this to Witkov, to Kushner, to Donald Trump, and that is why Donald Trump is like, oh, 12 trillion dollars. We need to sign the deal with Russia for whatever cost. Give them Ukraine. We need 12 trillion. Come on. I'm sure that now the White House administration thinks exactly as I told you. They want to push Ukraine, and they are pushing Ukraine for the deal. Deal means capitulation once again. And I would say Russia nailed it. They're professionals in brainwashing people. They know the full portrait of those incompetent politicians in Trump's circle and of Trump himself. This guy is very easy to manipulate, especially with those experts in Russian FSB, ex-KGB. They know how to deal with those kind of the people as Donny and his freak show. But the main thing that Ukraine is unpushable for negotiation. Ukraine is not dependent on the United States right now as it used to. Yes, some of the Pearl program, but the United States will continue to sell weapons for Ukraine via European countries. Because there is another aspect, the weapon manufacturing facilities, they belong to the companies affiliated with Republicans mostly. Also, the weapon production is happening in the red states as well, so Trump doesn't want to lose his popularity even more. It could be crucial for him. And the United States officials say that they will follow this Pearl program no matter what, regardless of the result of negotiations. So in this case, how would Donald Trump press Ukraine? Just tell, okay, you should give up Donbass? He already told that, and Witkov told that, so what? Alright, we have a drama with those Russian assets like Fico and Orban, regimes of Slovakia and Hungary. They promised to cut Ukraine from energy supplies, at least we heard from Fico. He threatens Ukraine with that. They need to renew the supplies of the oil through the Druzhba pipeline. And Hungary already cut the diesel supplies for Ukraine. Well, I guess not for a long time, couple of the months before elections in April in Hungary. That Orban will lose, according to any sort of the poll. Fidesz party, his party, is not that popular compared to opposition party TISA. Well, Orban has only way out is to rig the elections. Maybe he might do it, because he's a freaking dictator and Russian asset. Well, I guess Fico and Orban are angry because Croatia didn't let them to receive oil from the Russian side through their territory. Well, Croatia didn't say like no openly, but they say, we don't know, maybe we need to think, we need to coordinate it with the European Commission, and for now we are not ready for this decision. So stand by, we'll see, we'll look, maybe it will take some time. So they say no, but politely. Wow, this article, if it is truthful, it is crazy. European Union pushes Ukraine on oil pipeline repair as Croatia rejects request to transport Russian oil to Hungary and Slovakia. So European Union wants to push Ukraine for what? For repair jobs of this pipeline, which is on territory of Russia? I guess, like, what is happening? Well, maybe those are the Sky News. It's not a respectable source of information, but not just from this source I got this message. Also, Ukrainian channels say like that. Maybe they repost those news from the Sky News. For me, it looks surreal that Ukraine should repair some of the pipeline that goes through the Russian territory, and the European Union would demand that from Ukraine. It's not possible. As for me, I would be shocked if it is like that. And Zaluzhnyi expected that something is wrong with that guy. He now blames Zelensky. Zelensky and President's Office of Ukraine in the failure of the counteroffensive back in 2023. He gave an interview to Associated Press. It is published, you may read it out. Zaluzhnyi said that he didn't have enough resources for this counteroffensive. You are a freaking commander of Ukrainian army, so why would you start this counteroffensive if you do not have enough resources? You shouldn't have started it. First of all, are you silly or what? You should have said to Zelensky if he is so bad, I will not conduct this mission. No counteroffensive is possible. We should delay it, we should obtain more resources from allies, we should wait, okay? And we should concentrate forces to one direction. But now he blames Zelensky. Oh, it's not me. I was a commander, but Zelensky told me to do. Yeah, it's all Zelensky. I couldn't do anything, yeah. So who are you, Zaluzhnyi, was back then? Come on. Yeah, you may say in the comments that I'm attacking Zaluzhnyi or something, but he's like, if you read what he says out there in his social media, you'll understand that his brave personality was more fiction one. Yes, he did some of the really good stuff, but now why? What's the reason to blame Ukrainian government for what? Is it a proper time? I guess he's working with some of the forces, to destabilize also Ukrainian government. Not Russia, but other forces. And Ukrainian volunteers, including main ones like Sternenko, they're in shock. Why is he telling like that? Well, it's not the first interview where Zaluzhnyi blames someone for his own faults. Yeah, I mean, he was definitely the commander of Ukrainian army, of this counteroffensive. He was responsible for it himself as the commander of Ukrainian army. As Syrsky responsible for now. I don't personally like Syrsky, but Zaluzhnyi, come on, Zaluzhnyi, what is happening? Like, I don't understand that shit. That internal confrontation that Zaluzhnyi spreads right now. This is not convenient at all for Ukraine. Absolutely. By the way, Zaluzhnyi was spotted in Dominicana with his wife. You may check out Zaluzhnyi Dominicana, and there are some of the images where he is with his wife and some of the friends. For me, it's kind of silly that the general who didn't pass medical, yeah, he's writing this nonsense, and he is not out there in Ukraine. He's a military guy, general. He's a combat general. So I guess he was contacted by some of the forces, and he's working with them to get to power in Ukraine. I don't see any other explanation of why he does what he does. About Zelensky, well, he's not ideal, but what's the purpose to attack Zelensky right now? During this very harsh time for Ukraine, in the middle of those negotiations or something. Zaluzhnyi is not right here, absolutely. No. Guys, maybe I'm not correct, but I have this feeling that for now at least, this beef inside is not helping Ukraine at all. Zaluzhnyi said in an interview that the original plan was to concentrate enough forces in a single fist to retake the partially occupied Zaporizhia region, including Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, but Zelensky and other officials failed to allocate the necessary resources. So why would you start this operation if you are not sure about the outcome? If you upfront know that it will fail? Why there are losses? Like your commander of Ukrainian army, once again, yeah, we are returning to this stuff. He's not a soldier, he's not a low-rank commander. He's like, well, it's they are guilty, not me. Come on. If they are guilty, you too. It's working like that. Yeah, Max25 publishes this article from Associated Press. As Ukraine launched a counteroffensive in the northeast, Zaluzhnyi left a meeting at Zelensky headquarters and returned to his office in Kiev. Within hours, dozens of SBU agents showed up in Zaluzhny's office to search the premises. Zaluzhnyi also added that more than a dozen British officers were there at the time. Dozen British officers in Ukrainian military command? So was it planned together with the British military or military intelligence? At the same time, Zaluzhnyi called to Yermak, who was the head of the president's office of Ukraine, and he basically said that I will fight you and have already called in reinforcements to the center of Kyiv for support. I told Yermak that I would repel this attack because I know how to fight. So he retaliated back, but whether it happened in the real life, by the way, it happened September 2022. So during the Ukrainian counteroffensive, I guess by the time it was in Kherson direction, it wasn't the major counteroffensive of 2023 which failed. This one was successful. And why does Zaluzhnyi speak about it right now and not back then? The situation is fishy, it is ugly, and it is not what we need for Ukraine. Well, maybe I do not understand something, but I have my own opinion and I yap about it here on my channel. I want to be honest with you. You may have your own opinion, by the way, and you may write it in the comment section below. My friends, thank you so much for your kind support on Patreon and membership of the channel. Without you, my job wouldn't be possible. The link for my Patreon is in the video description right below, and to join membership, you may press join. Obviously, if you have this opportunity to support me in a financial way. If you don't have it, you may just press like to this video and subscribe for the channel. It is for free. And that is how you help this channel a lot to boost it in algorithms. Thank you so much for it. Well, my friends, I'm gonna keep you updated. Hope for the better news tomorrow. And I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.